Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I'm sharing some Fruity Puns and Copic Blends using the new June 2026 fruit salad kit from Love from Lizi. So these kits always have a ton of goodies in them. They're jam-packed. I'm going to be making 4 cards in this video, and then I also am going to be making 4 cards in a video for the Love from Lizi channel. I will link that in the description box below if you'd like some more inspiration for this kit. So first we have an embellishment pack with lots of different charms, lots of different goodies. I love these little fruit slices. I don't end up using the embellishment pack in this video, but there are so many good things in there. There are always such good variety and such unique things in there. There's also some dies that you can use in the cards as well. We have a bunch of colored solid cardstocks, and I'm going to be using these for mats in my cards. And then we have some beautiful fruit inspired prints, and I'm going to be using several of these in my cards as well. The main thing I'm going to be using is this stamp set. It has several different images as well as some fantastic punny themed fruit sentiments. Also in this kit is a bunch of pre-printed die cuts. These are I'm going to be using in the video on the Love from Lizi channel. There's so much variety in this as well. So lots of different pre-printed die cuts, perfect for cards. These would also be great for scrapbook pages or mixed media projects. There's a few add-ons that you could get with this kit as well. Some peel-on stickers or peel-off stickers, as well as these gorgeous metallic cardstocks. That white one is actually a glitter cardstock. It's absolutely beautiful. So to start off, I'm going to be stamping my images. Another thing that's not included in this kit that I'm going to be using in this video is the stitched ovals die set. This is a bunch of nested ovals, and I'm going to be using this as my main shape to stamp my images on, as well as have a mat around my stamped and colored images. I'm going to be using my Misty stamping tool in order to stamp these images. Now I'm going to be stamping them with some black memento ink because I want to color them with Copic markers. Any alcohol-based marker would work. You could use other mediums for coloring as well, but then you want to change up your cardstock based on whatever medium you want to color your images with. I like using the black memento with my Copic images, so that's what I'm going to be using. The other thing that I want to do with these stamped images is these are all individual fruit pieces. I want to have 2 of them in my image, especially for some of the sentiments like this one here with the pear image. The sentiment says we make a perfect pair, and I think it would also be great if there was 2 of them. So I'm going to be using some masking sheets, stamping the main image on that masking sheet, and then using my scissors to cut it out to mask that first image, and then position the stamp again so that we can place another pair in this instance, other fruit with the other images, behind the main one. So this masking sheet is kind of like a post-it note. Once I've stamped it and cut it, I can take that backing off and put it right onto that fruit. You could also use printed paper with some removable adhesive on the back, or you could use a post-it note and say stamp on the side that has the adhesive on it, and then cut it out and use that as well. You just want something on top of that main image so that when we stamp the second image, it's going to appear like it's behind that first one. And I'm going to be doing this with all of my images because it's just going to fill out that area a little bit better, as well as the fact that it's going to give me a little bit more to color with. So the pear is done. Next, we're going to stamp another one of the images, and each one of these has a perfect sentiment for it. There's a ton of sentiments in this set, and they all have some sort of fruit-themed pun, which is perfect. The next image I'm going to stamp is the watermelon, or the slice of melon. You could color it in different colors to create different melons. I'm doing it as watermelon simply because the printed paper I'm pairing it with is watermelon. So once again, I'm going to stamp the image with the sentiment. This one says you're one in a melon. Then I'm going to stamp on the masking sheet with that same melon stamp, cut it out, place it on the original, and then stamp a second one. So these masking sheets that I'm using come in larger pieces. I'm just using scraps for this, pieces that I haven't used for other projects, or I started using some and had some of the sheet left over. Because these images are fairly small, I don't really need a large piece. We just need one just a little bit larger than that stamp. And these images are very, very simple shapes to cut out, so they're not complicated at all to do that fussy cutting. So once I have this melon cut out of the masking sheet. I can take the backing off, I can put it on that original one, and I can position the stamp for a second stamping. Now I do make sure to clean off my stamp between the first and second stamping. I don't want to accidentally be positioning it, put that stamp down and have a little bit of ink transfer and then move that stamp in, not because I don't want it in exactly the same spot. So I do make sure to clean it off between each of the stampings. But that Memento ink is just dye-based ink, so I just use a damp microfiber cloth. It doesn't need to be any complicated stamp cleaner at all. Now I'm just doing 2 images for each of these pieces of fruit. You could do more if you wanted. I didn't want to overcrowd my area, but I also wanted to fill it out a little bit more, which is why I'm doing 2 for each one of them. I just thought it would fill that area a little bit more. Now, the size of oval that I chose was based on the fruit stamp, the sentiment, as well as stamping it a second time. You could do a smaller oval if you just wanted to do a single stamping. I wanted to also make sure that we could see a decent amount of the printed paper behind there because I wanted it to be visible that the printed paper and the image were coordinating. Now for this next image, we are doing a lime sized. It could also be a lemon slice or half a lemon. Now the sentiment says you're simply the zest. The pattern paper that's going behind it has both lemons and limes on it. So again, it could be either one. And I think there's also oranges behind it, although they are more of a yellow tone to them than really an orange tone. So it could be interpreted as either. I'm going to do exactly the same process. I stamped it one time, stamped it on a piece of the masking sheet, quickly fussy cut around it, put that mask on top of the original stamp, cleaning the stamp in the middle and letting it dry. Then I can position that stamp in the second stamping or second position, stamp it once again, and then remove that mask. So it's a super easy process to do. The one thing that you want to make sure is that the very first stamping is the image that you want in the foreground. The second stamping is going to appear like it's behind that first one. So if you're going to do a variety of different images together, you want to make sure that you're thinking about which one is supposed to go in front of the other one. And you're going to stamp from the farthest to the front to the back because every single one is going to appear behind the others if you're doing multiple images. So for the last one, we are going to do some kiwi. And the sentiment for this one says, "Kiwi to get together soon," which I think is also adorable. This one's going to go on top of some printed paper that has some kiwis as well as some pears on it. So that kiwi image is absolutely perfect, but you could also pair the pear image with it. Once again, stamped it on the original, then stamped it on the masking sheet using the same ink. It doesn't need a different ink on that masking sheet. Quickly cut it out, put that masking sheet right onto the first one, and then position the stamp again, making sure that it was cleaned in between, and stamp it once again. So it's a very repetitive process, but it's also a very simple process. Now I'm going to do the same layout on all 4 cards because I think it works and I want to keep those cards very simple. You could easily change the oval dies that I use to a different shape if you want. I chose my colors of my Copics based on the printed papers to go behind them. I wanted it to coordinate with them as much as possible. Some of the colors, once they're colored, are a little bit more vibrant. Some are a little bit off in tone, but they work perfectly. Now, I didn't write down the Copic colors that I used for each one of these cards, but I'm freezing them on the screen so that you can see them there. You can easily change up these colors as well. It doesn't need to be the exact same colors. It can be a little bit different. I just chose the best color options that I had based on the printed papers. So when I'm doing my Copic coloring, I always start with the lightest color, then I do the medium color. If I'm working with 3 colors, then I do the darkest, then I go back to the medium color and then the light color. If I'm only doing 2 colors, I do the light color, then the dark color, and then I go back over with the light color and blend it all out. Not only am I choosing my my Copic colors based on the color tones in the printed papers, but I'm also trying to color it somewhat similarly to the printed papers. So for the rind of the watermelon, it just has a hint of the dark green around the outside, and then most of it is a really, really pale minty green, almost white. So I'm doing that on the image as well. And then same with the inside of the watermelon. The darker color is towards the edge of the the inner part of the watermelon, and the lightest color is towards the edge. So that is how I colored that as well. For the pears on the printed paper are more of a yellow tone. So I'm going with yellows, doing a little bit of shading in a green tone and then blending it back in with the yellows. Again, trying to be somewhat similar. You're never going to be exact, or I am never going to be exact to the printed papers, but I'm trying to make it complement and coordinate as best as possible. And I always love when pears have that little bit of green on them. So with the shading or the darker color of the pears, I'm doing them towards the left side, but also towards the bottom. For the pear that is behind, most of the darker, the greener color is towards the left side, as well as right behind where the other pear is, because I want there to be a bit of a difference between the yellow in the front and the green in the back. Next, we have the lime, and once again, this could easily be changed to lemon or orange. I would just change the Copic colors. I chose to do them as limes because the printed paper has more yellows and almost yellowy oranges on it than green, and I really wanted to bring out the green from the printed paper. There's also a beautiful, bright, vibrant green in the solid color, so that was going to be perfect for matting behind that cardstock, so I opted to go with greens for this. But again, you could easily change it to lemons or even oranges, and it would work perfectly with the You're Simply the Zest sentiment as well. So the darker color for the lime goes on the peel. The lightest color is for the slice part. And then the medium tone, I just did a little bit of the medium tone in each one of the like wedge areas of that lime. So we have a little bit of color variation between all of them, but the lighter color is where the pith would be, which is the lightest of the greens. The last one we have here is the kiwi. So I'm going to do some browns on the peel. There's not a whole lot of peel showing, so I only did 2 shades. For some of these pieces, I did 2 shades, and for some of them, I did 3 shades. It really just depended on the color range I wanted, as well as which colors I had to coordinate with the papers. For the inside of the kiwi, I just have 2 greens here. I'm going to do the lightest of the 2 on top of the whole thing. Then I'm going to go in with the darker and just kind of go around the outside of that inner core, if you will. Again, I'm trying to do it similar to what it looks like on the printed papers, and the colors are similar to what are on the printed papers as well. Now, when you're coloring with Copic markers or just even dye-based markers, sometimes it can look a little bit flat. So one of the things that I like to do is add different mediums on top of my coloring to give it some extra texture, extra dimension, and just a different finish. So I'm going to finish my cards first, and then I'm going to add that medium to it. For the mat, for my oval, I chose the next size up, and I like that these ovals have stitching detail to them, so they're not just plain ovals, they have a little bit of extra detail to them, which I think takes them to the next level. And for those mats, I trimmed them, or I die cut them out of the center of the mat for the back of my card. Because we're having different layers go on top of it, you're never going to know that that circle or that oval was cut out of that mat, but it just makes your cardstock go a little bit further. And I love finding ways to make our cardstock, especially our specialty cardstocks, go a little bit further. One of the add-ons for this kit is that package of foil paper. And foil papers, because they have so much wow to them, you can get away with using less of them. So if you're going to use it as a mat for the outside of the card, and you want to use it for a mat for the inside part of the card, it's a great way to extend that specialty paper and make it go a little bit farther. Now for this particular card, I wanted my watermelon seeds to be shiny. I wanted to use a black glaze pen on them, but when I grabbed mine, it was actually dry, so I couldn't do that. So I ended up just using a Stardust shimmer pen on it just to give it a little bit of extra texture. You could easily use a black glaze pen if you have one. That would work perfect for it. It would just give the seeds a little bit of a different texture and give the light something to catch when you're tilting the card into the light. For the next card, we're doing the pear. So we have a darker print here, and I chose the purple to go with the print. And I think the yellowy green pears on top of it just show up really, really nicely with those other colors. For this one and for the rest of the cards, I'm going to be using some glossy accents to give different texture. Now, I'm not putting that glossy accents on both of my pears. I'm only doing it on the close-up one because I want to have a little bit of contrast between each one of those pears, and that's what does that for me. For the next card, we're doing the lime card. So I'm going to do that matte first, then once again, do that printed paper. I like to use liquid glue with this because you can use just a little bit. It goes a long way. And you have that little bit of wiggle room to move and shimmy things in place and get them placed exactly where you want them. For the lime slices, once again, I'm going to use that glossy accents to give it a little bit of texture, but I'm just going to put it in the center of each one of those little wedges. I'm not going to put it over the whole top surface. I want there to be a difference in texture between the little wedge pieces and the pith. So I'm just putting a little bit towards the wider outside edge, and then I'm going to use my die pick and in that glossy accent to just kind of run it through there to spread it out a little bit. This way I have a little bit more control. If you're just using it right from the bottom or bottle, often for really fine areas, you don't have a whole lot of control over it. So by doing it this way, I can make sure it goes in that wedge shape. Now, depending on how much glossy accents you're going to use, that's going to depend on how long it takes for it to dry. I let these dry for about 45 minutes, which was probably longer than I really needed to, but the amount used on the pear was more than the other one, so that one was going to take the longest to dry, and I wanted to make sure that it was completely dry before I started touching my cards. Now we're on to the last card, which is the kiwi. So this one I chose the solid yellow cardstock from the kit for my mat. Once again, cutting the oval out of it to do as a mat on my stamped and colored kiwi piece. And for this one, once I have it together, I'm going to put the glossy accents towards the outside flat edge of each one of those kiwi pieces. So on the slice, I'm putting it on the outside pieces. I'm not having any on that center core piece. This is just going to give the outer part, the fruitier part, a little bit more texture and dimension, a little bit more gloss. And again, it just catches the light nicely and it draws your eye to it by having those different textures there. Another way that I often like to add texture is using some glitter glue, but for these, I thought just the glossy accents was the perfect finish for them. It didn't take anything away from the fruit, but it just added that extra little bit of glossy or a little bit of glossy texture to it. Now, if you don't have glossy accents, you could also use a clear glaze pen. It would have a somewhat similar look to it. It would have less drying time and you would have a little bit more control. However, for larger areas like that pear, you might see some pen strokes there. So glossy accents is typically my preference for it because you don't have those pen strokes in there. But I think having the fruit stamp that coordinates with the rest of the printed papers is fabulous, and I just love those punny stamps to it. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate all the time that you spend with me. I hope you have a fantastic day.